having such fun with it. I hope you're all getting a lot out of this. That would please me. Thank you. Someone just made me some coffee. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So we're at where are we? Bear with me just one moment, you guys. I got everything here, but too much paperwork, you know. Oh. This is the way I feel sometimes. I don't know if it makes sense to you, but it makes sense to me. And I was going to tell you, there's, by the way, I can't thank Billy enough for helping me with the screen sharing, because I would have felt bad if I hadn't been able to pull it off. There's a story, a little bit of a story behind this photograph of me in the park here. And I was in the Navy at that time. I worked for an admiral, 3-star admiral, the highest in the United States, Vice Admiral Robert Goldthwait. And I was on what they call Sinatra staff, as Chief of Naval Air Training, okay? So here I'm out in the park, drunk, with my bottle there. And I don't know, a month or two down the road or something like that, I get a letter addressed to me, which is here. And it says, the sender is Bobby S. Bobby S. Shipper from 315 East Broad Street in Ozark, Alabama. And so it just says Lou, Sinatra, NAS, Pensacola, Florida. Well, the postman must have written this out. Try Luther H. Wood and drawn a circle around it, okay? So I get this letter. I open it up at my desk, you know, in the office there, and a picture falls out, and it's this picture. And the note says, "My, you naughty boy. 'Twas fun, though, wasn't it?" I have no idea who she was or what. None whatsoever, you know. So it's amazing. I love this stuff. Could come from there to here. I was 21 years old there in that picture. I'm dressed up and all that, but, you know, looking good. So anyway, we're moving on here to step 10. Oh, okay. So the only thing I really want to mention about step 10 are 3 significance things. There's a statement on the left-hand side of that page and where we start out on step 10 in our book. And it says, we have now entered the world of the spirit. And I put a little note there in my book that says, whether we believe it or not, know it or not, feel it not, or whatever, that is a flat-out statement from Alcoholics Anonymous. For by now we have entered the world of the spirit. So I don't care what you feel like. If you've gone this far, if you've been complete, if you've reviewed everything that you've done, you've gone through all of this and made all of these amends and everything. Or, you know, this can also happen halfway through your amends. It can be, you know, you can be moving into 10 at the middle of your amends. So if you've gone that far, you have entered the world of the spirit. On the next page over, it starts talking about by now we have begun to sense the flow of his spirit into us, you know. And that's what happens to many of us, much of us. It's a leveling experience. When I said like earlier, how vast, how majestic, how fabulous this thing is. How I was able to see that through my, God uses whatever's at hand. That little astronomy class that I took over here at College of the Desert, that I was able to see the majesty, the absolute fabulousness of all of it, that it cannot have just happened. It did not just happen. And you know what? That part of that divine power is buried within you and buried within me. And all I have to do is open my heart and try to see it. I tell people that I sponsor, I don't care if you like that meeting. Go sit in it anyway. Any meeting, just go sit down in it, okay? Because I don't like it. I don't think nobody likes me, and I go sit in the meeting, because there's such a thing, I believe, when we're all together, is a collective power. When I step in that room, I can be down in the dumps. But whatever they have is multiplied by 30, multiplied by 35 people, however many are in that room. It's what I saw when they took me to the first meeting that morning when I came to. They took me to a meeting over in Lomita. I looked around that room, saw all those people. There was something in that room. They were looking at me. I sat over there at night, mind you, with my glasses on, my dark sunglasses. And there was something right about these people. In our book, I think it's 165, it talks about these people and what they have, that essence that is within them. Whatever these people had, it was right. Their clothes were right. They smelled right. They looked right. There was something about them. There was something about their eyes. And whatever they had down deep inside where they lived, they had so much of it that it spilled all over me. And I felt safe for the first time that I can remember. Long time, So small wonder to know why I feel like I am so lucky, to even be here. So the 10th step is something it's something we work toward. It's a way. It's kind of like a balancer. It's something that helps me keep my balance in my life. It's a way of checking myself out at night. I do this every single night when I go to bed. I'll lay there and I'll think over my day, and I'll run through it, and I'll do this check and balance system, to see how I came out that day. And God forbid if I don't do what the step says, if I owe you something during the day, if I don't promptly admit it, because then I'm stuck with it. I'm stuck all night, probably. At this rate of my sobriety, I'm probably not going to get to sleep tonight, So anyway, this 10th step is so important to me. And it talks about it being a lifetime proposition. This is the way I'm going to live my life from now on, 10, 11, and 12, okay? It says our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. So here we are one day, again, at the one day at a time, growing one day at a time. Nobody's in a rush anymore, by the way. We're just in here, working at it, one day at a time. For the first time in our lives, we have all the time in the world. God doesn't know about time. Doesn't even exist to him. It exists to you and me. So for the first time in our lives. So, but okay, it's really important too. I check out every morning. I look at my plans for the day. I consider my plans for the day, and I'm liable to stop right there. I have found, listen, I'm a very curious person, okay? I like to investigate all of it. My friend Mike Lorenz is on here this morning, I think, and he told that story. We laugh about it a lot. Alcoholics get down to the corner, or to the fork in the road, and they see the sign that says, two-headed calf this way. Well, we have to go. We have to go. There's no question. We go. We get down the end of the road, and we see, nah, this ain't it. So we come back to the fork in the road, and we go back on the path again. So, So anyway, I plan my day every single morning. I try to anyway. And I may write a few things down that I want to make sure that I cover, And then I say, I believe, where I was going with all that is, I believe that this book, I like other books. I love the autobiography of a yogi by the Paramahansa Yogananda. Okay, we are not in conflict with any of these people. When I gave a retreat over in Hawaii, up there at the Our Lady of Charity place up there in the hills there, I gave a retreat up there, and on a Saturday morning, they came to me and they said, "Would you do us a favor? Would you allow this Buddhist priest to give his segment this morning before you start yours?" And he said, we usually have him on Sunday, but a lot of people live in the islands, and they have to leave on Sunday. A lot of people miss him. So would you give up an hour of your time and so I said, of course I would. So he comes in with his robes, and he looks so clean and so shiny and so good. And he has his hands, and he starts in, and he talked for about an hour or an hour and a half, something like that. And when it was my turn to get up, I said, "Isn't it great? We're all on the same page. We're saying the same exact thing." My friend Howard Polis used to say, "Wherever you find God, visit that. Go sit in that window again. Wherever you find him." Or, as I understand the generosity of God, wherever he finds you. Because if you're a seeker and you're looking, he will find you if you can't find him. That is my experience, I'm telling you, So anyway, this is, if it says constantly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will done it," but I will be done in this step, I have to say that so many times during the day. Our book says constantly. It uses that word constantly. It uses that word new, like the prayer I was telling you about, the set-aside prayer. I'm asking for a new experience. Every single time I see the word new in their book, Alcoholics Anonymous, I circle it, because that's what I'm looking for, this new experience. We're evolving. We're all of us evolving, We just don't want the basis of our society changed, because it's the reasoning is because the sum total of those almost 100 people or whatever it is can tell you that the consciousness of the presence of God is the most important factor in their lives today. So anyway, but we got to be open, because we're evolving, okay, and we're being taught. If we'll pay attention during the day, that doesn't mean I can give you not 100% concentration, okay? I try to do the very best that I can, though, and I try to start my day with this 10th step, And I'll tell you about at night when I check out, So here we are at step 11, okay? And step 11, like I said earlier, I believe that Alcoholics Anonymous may be the most spiritual movement on this planet, okay? And with all the other meditation and things that are I have my things, I have my stuff, I have my books that I consult. I started out on a project because that line in our book that said, "Fail to enlarge his spiritual life," struck me in the head like an arrow. Man, I went out and bought about 8 or 9 books. And it doesn't matter what the books are. It doesn't matter. I've got one over here called Your Utmost to His Highest. It's a very religious book. And what I did with these books is I went through them. And every time it said, like, whatever it was, I just said, "That's the great reality. That's this and that's that." I translated it into words that I understand. Because, see, in the beginning in Alcoholics Anonymous, I began to develop a vocabulary for me that I understand. When I looked up the word recovery, it says obtaining a usable substance from an unusable source. And I thought, I can buy that. I'm the unusable source. Whoever thought Luther Wood was ever going to be useful for anybody else, ever. I didn't. I certainly didn't. So Anyway, I believe that this meditative process of covering steps 10, 11, and 12 throughout the day may be the most spiritual movement on this planet. And let me see here. Hold on a minute. Oh, well, heck. Anyway, I start out here. Now, I've rearranged things. Now, I'll just give you some numbers, okay? So that if you want to follow this pattern, you can follow this pattern. The first thing I do is number one, on awakening, okay? It says on awakening, let's think about 24 hours ahead. Then it says we consider our plans for the day. So that tells me what to do. The third thing that it says, I ask God to direct my thinking. Let it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, and self-seeking motives. So I ask for that. And then it goes on to say, when I get stuck during the day, I ask God for inspiration. It tells me what to do. Intuitive thought and inspiration. Why? Because you and I begin to live our lives by intuition. That hunch. We're not always right, but pretty much always right. We have a sign language contingency this morning on here. And I sponsored this guy who was totally deaf. He's never heard a sound in his life, ever, not ever. Pat and I took him to see Cirque du Soleil down in Santa Monica. We got front row seats so they could put his hands on the stage and feel the vibrations. That's the closest he's ever come to hearing anything, ever. And Jimmy had an experience in this program that revolutionized his thinking, that changed him. All of a sudden, he and I could speak, really speak, with our fingers. And I have found that God doesn't care if you're speaking Swahili or doing it with your fingers. He doesn't care, the message gets transported one way or another, And I remember when the light went on in his eyes, it almost knocked me off we were at Maria's Cucina over in Brentwood, and it just about knocked me off my chair when I saw that. Let me tell you something. If that ever happens to you, you're dead. You will see something. When you get a front row seat to that one, you will be forever lost. You will understand what we're doing here. So anyway, we were coming out of the Pacific Group one night, just blabbering away, going down the street with our fingers, And he said something, and I said, "My God, Jimmy, how did you know to do that?" And he said, "Now listen to me." He says, "My voice told me." I said, "What? You have a voice?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Let me ask you something. Is your voice usually right?" And he said, "Yes." Here's the power of God, folks. Here's the power of God one more time. A voice in a person who is totally flat-ass dumb, deaf. So anyway, my God, I do get carried away, don't I? So, so we go on to say inspiration, blah, blah, blah. So then here's the hardest one for us to do, Al-Anons and alcoholics alike. Relax and take it easy. Oh, God. I should be doing something. I should, I got a new commandment for you, Thou shalt not should on thyself today. So, oh, God. So, anyhow, relax and take it easy. Then it says what used to be the hunch, what we're talking about here is the intuitive thought, becomes a working part of the mind. And like it says, we're not always on target. We're not always right, But we will find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more in the plane of inspiration. We come to, and it says, we come to rely on it. If I don't get my answer or whatever I'm looking for, I've just got to practice a little patience here, because 9 times out of 10, when I get down the end of the road here, it will be revealed to me. And you know what? Sometimes I may never know, and that's quite all right. I don't need to know, maybe. So I let it go. This is God's world. It's God's business. I'm either going to find it out or not. So then I jump down all the way to the bottom of that page here. It says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. And it says that word again, we constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Okay? Somebody way more famous than me said that on a cross one time. He begged the Father to take away this thing from him that was facing him tomorrow. He was really upset. He knew what he faced tomorrow, But he winds up saying, thy will be done, not mine. And that is submission to the power, not to the point, once again, that we become servants or whatever. We are learning how to work in concert with this power, with it. With that power, with that indwelling power within us, let that little light shine, let it work. So then I go on to read the first 2 paragraphs in chapter 7 on step 12 here, that shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. It says, suggestion here, carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they're very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives, okay? Then I go back over to page 87 again, where it says, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. That's the first thing. Then I've written in here, number 2 for me is show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Then I put a number 3 down here. It says, give me the knowledge of your will for me and the power to carry it out. And then number 4, I ask what I can do for the man who is still sick, because that is my purpose. The purpose in life here is to find your gift. And I don't know if it's the purpose. Let me see. I've got something for you. I didn't realize I had this. You're going to love this.
Yeah.
The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. Because that's the only way we can keep it. We give it all away one day. And then the next morning we got it all back again to give away. It's a continuum. It just keeps going on. Chuck C. used to say, world without end. We're infinite children on an infinite journey. Does that blow your mind? What? Infinite children on an infinite journey. That means this is not the end. This is eternity right now. It's just a segment of it. We get to be human, something we've never been. It's a delicious place to be. How are we going to act? How are we going to behave? How are we going to treat one another? We have to always try to see that divine light within one another. We have to. We have to. Otherwise, we just die and wither on the vine here, I'll tell you a little story about when we were living in Tucson over there. I made a 12-step call. In those days, we went out, When I drove up, I thought, this guy lived at 1212 Hedrick Street, okay? If you're into numbers, 1212. 12 and 12, come on. So I pulled up and parked, and the car that was in the driveway had the Spanish call it hierba, that long grass, that grows on the plains. This hierba is growing up through the car and out the windows. And I thought, oh my, we've been here a long time. I went up and rapped on the door, and nobody came. I hear TV going on in there, and I am not going to give up. So the door was unlocked, by the way. So I finally, after no success at getting anybody to come to the door, I pushed the door open. Now listen, my house was a wreck when they came to get me. I mean a friggin' wreck, okay? But I'd never been in a house like Gordon Johnston's. Gordon Johnston was dying in there. God love his soul. I pushed that door open. It was about a foot of trash on the other side. And I didn't even bother to go in the kitchen. I was scared to go in the kitchen. I don't know what was growing out of the sink, okay? It looked like the Little Shop of Horrors in there. So I was scared to go in the kitchen. I just went past it. Gordon is laying down on a broken down sofa. It had legs on it. The legs are broken on one end. And he's laying with his head down by the floor. And he's got these glasses tied on his head. He looks like Dustin Hoffman in Papillon, where he'd broken his glasses and tied them on his head, and they were as thick as Coke bottles. Gordon had epileptic seizures, and he had to have his glasses, otherwise he couldn't see, And he's watching TV with no sound at this point. And so I walk in, I get through the trash and all of that. I sat down on the high end of the sofa. And I'm looking down at him and I said, Gordon, how are you? And he says, and I said, oh, that good, eh? I mean, he was so drunk he couldn't talk. So I start telling him my story. And about halfway through my story, he leaned up as best he could and he looked at me and he pointed at me and said, you know. I said, yes, I do know. And now you know. See, we're only the messengers. We bring the message. It isn't up to us whether he gets it or not, because Gordon drank after that. But, I held tight with him. I helped him in garage sales and stuff. Made a little money here and everything. I remember letting him off one day, and I said, Gordon, do not get drunk tonight. He had $150 in his pocket from selling some of his old relics in that house. He said, I'm not going to get drunk, And I said, Gordon, do not get drunk tonight. And he said, I'm not going to get drunk tonight. And he said, I'm going over to the Circle K. I'm going to get some Twinkies and some milk, and I'm not getting drunk tonight. So when he left me, I said, Gordon, don't get drunk tonight. So he called me the next morning, and my mother, when I called my mother, I would say hello, and she said, you've been drinking. It used to be, how in the world did she know I've been drinking, right? So Gordon called me up. He says, hello. And I said, you've been drinking. It was so obvious, And God had taken him home and taken care of him. And he had a seizure in my house. It went on and on and on and on and on, But anyway, Pat and I went over to Tucson a couple of years after that. And we went to the Pima Club, which is what we did on Thursday night ordinarily. And the secretary comes up to me, who did not know me, by the way, but I was a stranger to him. So he said, my speaker didn't show up tonight. Would you speak? And so I agreed, and I gave my talk. And afterwards, somebody came up to me and took my hand and said, I wanted to thank you for your message tonight. And he said, I want you to know this. He said, Gordon is sober. And he said he has almost 2 years now. And he said he would have been here tonight, but he works as a respiratory technician at the hospital over here in Tucson. And he had duty tonight, so he couldn't come. He said, I can't wait to tell him you're here. So see, we don't know. We're just the messenger. We bring the word, and then it's either heard or it's not, So what I'm telling you in this step is carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can, because somebody may lean up to you one day and say, you know, because they know we can hear the music in Alcoholics Anonymous. I heard you. I heard you that morning sitting on the edge of my seat. I heard the music. You know, all my life I've been hearing the drums and the cymbals and stuff. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard the symphony. I heard it. I could hear you where I couldn't hear all those people that tried to help me all those years, you know. So, there's a little book, you know, and it's called The Greatest Thing in the World. It's by Henry Drummond. I don't know if you know this book, but it's, you know, in the very beginning, Anne and Bill and Bob and Bill and Lois didn't have a big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. They had all kinds of little things that they liked to do. Anne loved the book of James and the Bible. You know, she referred to that a lot. But this is one of the little books that they used in their meditation in the morning, The Greatest Thing in the World by Henry Drummond, you know. And it's the most captivating little book. It's just absolutely delicious. Aside from the Sermon on the Mount, it's fabulous, you know, by Emmett Fox. And but in The Greatest Thing in the World, it talks about retracing. Henry Drummond retraced Stanley Livingstone's steps in the darkest of Africa. The thing about Henry Livingston is he didn't speak a word of Swahili. Not one word of Afrikaans. All he took with him to Africa was love. That's all he had. And every time Henry Drummond would mention his name, their faces would light up in remembrance of the only white man they'd ever seen who brought love to Africa. You know, that's all we have here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Love is all there is. If you ever get an email from me, it will say life is magic, : love is the wand. Because that's the truth, you know. So I'm going to say to you, wherever you go, take only love with you. You can take nothing greater, and you need take nothing less. And here it is. It's the man who is the missionary, not his words. Thank you all for being so sweet to me. I have loved every minute of it today.